big lesson about balancing professional and personal obligations. As a freelancer, it is very important to not get attached to your work. It is extremely important not to get attached to the project that you've been working on. We talk about this a lot with cultural consultants. As a cultural consultant, you can tell a company what you think they can do, but you cannot guarantee that they will actually act on your feedback. As a freelancer, it is very important for you to understand that once you sign that contract and once you submit your work, that's it. You have no control over it. You have no control over what the editors do.
You're a hired gun.
You're a hired gun.
Unfortunately, that is it.
That's it, right? You're a spiderling, and the company is Doc Ock and Peter Parker's body, right? Once you turn in that work, that's it. You have no control over where it comes out. I mean, we saw this with Candlekeep Mysteries. Graham Barber submitted his adventure, and he didn't like what his editor did. And Graham didn't even realize that until the book came out, right? And now he has requested that his name be removed from subsequent editions of the game. And look, I respect Graham, and I think that's a very values-driven move to make.
I think his name is still on D&D Beyond, though.
Oh, D&D Beyond's got to fix that.
I don't know.
But, I was lucky. I had a really great editor who, as I was reading Oriental Adventures Live, was kind enough to be like, okay, remove all mentions of Karator. You can keep Sholung, but let's remove Karator. Mm-hmm. You and I both worked on projects, and we have really put our heart and soul into them. I worked on one really recently for 2 years. I made really good money. It was for a company that paid really well. It was not a per word. It was like a flat rate. I made enviable amount of money on it. And it was a very personal project. It was the first time I got to write about like the Chinese diaspora, and I used a lot. You worked on the same project.
I edited Daniel's work, so I can confirm that it was really good. It was, yeah. If it had been allowed to manifest into this world, it would have changed the game. I think it would have.
Oh, that's kind of you.
I think it would have.
I think it would have been the first time a mainstream TTRPG would have seen really interesting stories about the Chinese diaspora.
Yeah.
Not an indie project or anything. But yeah, I put my heart and soul into this project. I wanted to make it as real as possible. Like, I sent them reference photos of like family members.
And I doubled up on the reference stuff. Like I did in the cultural consulting I sent in a lot of research for things that they could use to supplement your work.
I sent them like photos of like, so the headquarters of this faction was in this restaurant. I sent them photos of my grandparents' original restaurant. I got really invested. I put real family members' names as characters. I told real deep Chinese American stories. I did a lot of historical research. And
is this there's actually two projects that you did all this research for.
There's two projects.
There's two projects, and they've both kind of gotten canned. So.
Yeah, and so
and I worked on both of them afterwards.
You worked on both of them, and because I was like, hey, I would like this other perspective. One of them because you had a very unique perspective, and I was like, Jeremy is the only one that I want to edit this because he's the only one who can. And both projects ended up, to my knowledge, got shelved.
One of them was not.
We can't say that. We can't say that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. We can't say that. Okay.
Effectively shelved, and not because of the quality of the work. Because of decisions made by people beyond the freelance creative team.
Yeah.
And I'll be open and vulnerable about this. It really hurt.
Yeah.
It really hurt because up until this point, I had only worked on things that, hey, I know this is going to see the light of day. And this was the first time I worked on a project where I was so hyped. And I learned the lesson that, hey, things can get shelved. And so as a freelancer, it's really important not to get too attached to a project or too attached to your work. You don't know what an editor's going to do to it. You don't know what a consultant might say about it. You don't know if the project is going to even see the light of day. So very important to set those expectations mentally before you start working. I have learned that the hard way, and it sucks.
It's tough when that happens. I mean, you got paid, I got paid. Like we made money, but I don't think either one of us is really in it for the money. Like I've just complained about the money
Yeah, we're not in it for the
for
money.
20
Like
minutes.
I could just
And
not do TTRPGs forever and
I
live
think,
comfortably for the rest of my life.
yeah, I think that realizing that you are a hired gun, that you know if you do the job on time and professionally, you will get paid, but you don't have control after that point. An
Hmm.
editor team is going to go in and change what you wrote oftentimes just because they have to, but the nature of the project might change because these things are in gesticulation like a year, 2 years in advance.
Yeah,
Um, we both worked on projects that have been canceled at this
or
point.
pushed back,
Or
pushed
pushed
back
back.
too.
Tianxia got pushed back like almost like half a year, 7, 8
Margrave got
months.
pushed back too.
Margrave the Marcher Lords got pushed back as well. And things get beyond your control, and you kind of have to just roll with the punches. Then, eventually, there will be a payoff, but even then, like what you end up seeing in publication might be a little bit different from what you wrote. And if it's a situation like what happened with Graham and Candlekeep Mysteries, hopefully that won't happen to you, but you gotta be ready for that possibility that the final result will be markedly different or changed than what you submitted.
Yeah,
And I'm feeling a little bit nervous about seeing like this Pathfinder article I wrote come out next month, because I can say this actually because yeah, the monsters have been revealed in the current volume. So I wrote Pathfinder Adventure Path number 198. I wrote an article in the back. Volume 198 is called "With No Breath to Cry," I believe, and I wrote an article on a type of monster that has just been revealed in the volume that came out this month. The when what I wrote is sort of like a history and the ecology of the monster, but I know that the text I wrote, there's some discrepancies in the reveal this month
yeah.
and what I wrote, because we were all working on this back as freelancers way back in the day, and we had no idea of like different details that might change, like the visual style of the monster, and so I'm a little bit nervous to see like what it's going to look like when I get the final book in my hands next month, but that's just the way it is. Like there are things that change in projects over the course of a year, and you kind of gotta just be ready and enthusiastic as you can to deal with those changes, even though it's really hard sometimes, especially when the project gets canned.
Yeah, and we see this, and it's not just with writers. We see this with artists too. Like we saw this with Wizards of the Coast, and the initial artist's work being augmented with an AI tool. That was
Hmm.
a big controversy. I drew the draft maps for Book of Inner Alchemy, and seeing the final maps, I'm like, it looks like they traced over my drafts. I didn't get
Yeah,
credited as a cartographer,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but yeah,
But
really
that's
important
yeah. It's
not
I
to
mean, this happens a lot in creative industries. Like
totally.
it's
You have
even
to
worse. Than,
understand
like
that.
if you work in the video game industry, you can spend years of your life putting so much effort into highly visual, detailed things just for the project to get canceled. Sometimes in the 11th hour, and that's even worse.
Or for you could work on a game and it just get absolutely shat on by everyone,
Yeah.
right? Like think about like Gotham Knights got
About
shat
Gotham
on.
Knights, which I actually think is not a bad game. It's
And I
just
know
not
somebody
what
who worked
people
on it,
wanted.
right? Or
Yeah.
think of all the people who worked on Suicide Squad when that was gameplay was first released on Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Although they just put out a new
They
video,
just
and
they're changing things,
yeah, they're
but like
changing
imagine how
things.
those
It's
people
getting some
felt,
stuff.
right?
Yeah, it's tough, and especially if you work for. I mean, if you're working for a big corporation, like I think Rocksteady is. They
They're
own
big.
themselves,
They're
but
big.
but they're pretty big, and like Warner Brothers, whichever Warner Brothers studio made Gotham Knights, like they're owned by Warner Brothers, so like you're not entirely in control of your own destiny there. You're like a big company is controlling the
Yeah.
outcome,
Or
and
think about
so
people. A really good example in video games. There was a really cool game that I was hyped about years ago called Scalebound.
oh yeah, I remember Scalebound.
That
Yeah,
game got fully canceled.
yeah,
It was a game of it was like an action RPG, very similar to like Devil May Cry, open world, but you have dragons. It looked
hmm,
fucking sick. Game got
yeah,
canceled. It was supposed to be on like Xbox One.
yeah. It got canceled,
Got
and
canceled. And then,
Like the Batgirl movie, we just got canned
oh
after it
yeah,
was already done.
the
Oh
Batgirl
God.
movie, really great example. It's done. Nobody's gonna see it, right?
I mean, thankfully, I think the thing we both worked on. I mean, the Sting it's it's much smaller in scope than the Batgirl movie, but the Sting I imagine is kind of similar for both of
Yeah,
us.
absolutely.
So